Hello, this is the League One Lowdown review show brought to you from the Football Deck Podcast Network. It's Seb Jones alongside Jamie Johnson as ever. Jamie, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, Seb. How are you?
Good, thank you. Yes, I'm good today. Yesterday, as we'll come on to a little bit later on, very miserable outing at the seaside. I guess, yeah, you could probably guess where that is going as well. But yeah, considerably drier today, so plenty
Yeah,
of
it was a
positives.
very wet day. Losses for both of us. Sam as well, we will talk about later on. So the only one out of the four of us that's happy is Callum, obviously a great victory for Lincoln. So not a great weekend all round for us four.
And it takes some doing to please Callum Davis, that's for sure. So yeah, we'll crack on as usual. Sort of we'll look at six matches from Saturday's games in a bit of detail, and then we'll cover the rest of the results right at the end as well as a sort of summary. We're going to start with a game. Um, well, I guess that involved a managerial change before the games were played, and that's at Wycombe. We've spoke about this a bit before, Jamie, in terms of Mike Dodds, who was in before, not the right fit for Wycombe at all. Was sort of going to be heavily rumoured to be the next manager that was going to be relieved of his duties. That happened. That was the case, and pretty quickly they brought Michael Duff in. A manager that has managed at this level, was at Huddersfield last year, was at Barnsley a couple of years ago as well, got them to the playoff final. Manager that knows how to win games at this level and knows how to succeed. I guess before we go into the game, what do you make to that appointment in the first place?
Well, it's a cracking appointment, isn't it? I mean, you outlined it yourself there, Seb, in terms of how well he knows the division and how well he has done in the division and was pretty hard done by most recently. Obviously, at Huddersfield, in terms of when he got sacked with the team just outside the playoff places. So it's a good move, perhaps for him as well, coming into a team who obviously want to push towards the top of the table, and a good move, obviously, for Wycombe, bringing in an experienced manager at this level, which is the opposite of what Mike Dodds brought to the table in terms of he had his identity and his philosophy of football, but didn't have the experience yet. And it never really worked, did it? He was so wedded to his ideas, and a lot of managers are. I don't think it is always a criticism. You've got a lot of managers at the very top of football. I mean, you got the Postecoglou who was at Spurs, now obviously at Forest, and Amorim at Manchester United. You got these managers who are very wedded to ideas, and if it isn't going their way, it's the worst thing possible. And if it is working, then it's great. This philosophy of football, and for Dodds, it wasn't working at all, and he was playing this style, very possession orientated, of course, and it just never fitted in with the players they had, and there were so many players as well in terms of big resets in both summer and in January, just gone. So it never worked, really, did it? But even saying all of that, I was still slightly surprised when the news came through because they seem to be so far down this path that it was in a way harder to turn around and run back than it was to continue to see where it ended up. So that was my surprise that they actually had made the jump and decided we just need to cut our losses if you like. But in bringing in Michael Duff as quickly as they did, they obviously had that plan and this is what we're going to do, and it brings in a completely different um, identity. Might be a bit strong a term for it, but it brings in a totally different ethos to that club, and already they have to get that victory. We'll talk about that, I guess, in a second, but it has already turned that place around in terms of the mood music after what was a really drab period with Mike Dodds.
Yeah, and we will go into the game in just a second, but I guess in Michael Duff's first interview, uh, since being appointed, one of the first things he said is we want to play fast attacking football, and I think that sort of breathed a sigh of relief for a lot of Wycombe fans in that how Mike Dodds played beforehand just wasn't that at all. So to get this sort of new style, this new way of playing, and to be sort of open from the off, saying I want to play from attacking football, move the ball fast. I think that is pretty relieving if you're a Wycombe fan, and that was sort of evident straight away in terms of the Michael Duff's first result as a Wycombe uh, head coach in charge of proceedings there. 2-0 victory against Northampton Town, and they were good value, weren't they, Wycombe?
Yeah, exactly. That good value is definitely the word to subscribe to it. It was the first win, a first debut win for a Wycombe manager since 1988. Jimmy Kellman was the last Wycombe manager to do that. They've had some good managers since then, none of whom have won their first game in charge. But he brings such more of an adaptability, a pragmatism in terms of he can win in different ways. Whereas a Mike Dodd's team on their day looked very good, but they could only win in one particular manner. And when that was shut down, then they were all at sea. Whereas Duff brings in an idea where you can win in different ways. And they showed that already. They were much more direct, less passing it around the back, and more willing to get forward. They looked entertaining. They looked energized, more expressive was a word I saw used, and they were creating good chances. Luke Leahy, beg your pardon, had both assists for Harvey and Abbott's goals, both nice finishers as well, and he's made that instant impact. He had very little time with the squad, terms of what I've been told by people in and around Wycombe. Jaden Wilkins, who's the Wycombe reporter of the Football League World, he had 40 minutes with his team. He had very minimal time, to say the least. Tom Hounsnell picked the team. He was the only one of Dodds' coaches that has remained, showing obviously that there's something there with him. So he deserves a lot of credit, as much as the credit goes to Michael Duff for the impression he's put on the team as well. But they were very organised, pretty reminiscent of the Ainsworth team that, I mean, he's doing really well at Gillingham at the minute, 21 games unbeaten in League Two, and they look very assured. And to do it so quickly in such short order is a really fantastic sort of result from the work they've put in the week.
Yeah, it's a big feat in terms of I guess, like I said, with minimal time with the squad. It's only Wycombe's second win of the season, from the 9 played so far this term. Is this sort of what's the sort of term? Is this sort of a chance for Wycombe to plunge you up something, perhaps, in terms of disappointing start to this season, disappointing end to last season? Is this sort of a corner turn, maybe,
Big
perhaps, in terms of
reset,
a
isn't it?
big
Perhaps.
reset? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think they need it to be, don't they? If they're going to end where they want to. I mean, we're still very early on in the season. We've had 8 or 9 games. We're not into double digits yet. There is a long, long time to go. But it is already those signs that there is something in this new direction. And we'll see how it goes the next few weeks. I mean, you wouldn't be surprised if they struggled for a little bit as they got used to this new system after the sort of my way or the highway a little bit, in terms of how Dodds played in a very specific way. To change from that will take a little bit of adjusting. So we'll see how they get on in the immediate, but in the more medium to long term, if Michael Duff can bring in some of his players and maybe move on some of the players that don't fit, then he'll be in a perfect position to push this team forward. And they've got every chance to do it. I guess a word on Northampton in a second. They were, for their part, pretty poor in this game. It's sort of Wycombe were very good, and they obviously deserve the credit. Northampton, though, were pretty poor. But it's a win, and that is always important, isn't it? And just getting that first win, and even just the optics of it, of ticking that box, if you like, is always a good sign.
Yeah, well, the result obviously favours Wycombe, but in terms of Northampton, disappointing from them. They've had a couple of good results so far this season, Northampton, but I think it's sort of a bit of a reality check facing Wycombe, perhaps, in terms of their rejuvenated squad. And yeah, I think that one of the star players so far this season been Cameron McGeehan. It just sort of shows you that he was given a 4.9 rated from FOTMob. So that sort of shows that in terms of one of Northampton's best players this season, even he struggled to really get a firm grip of the game. Going forward. But credit to Wycombe and credit to Michael Duff, a first win under sort of his
Yeah.
ownership, his tenure at Wycombe.
Yeah, they have the
Yeah, good
lowest
result.
XG so far this season at Northampton, and that sort of shows you all you need to know in terms of their lack of creation, and that they really barely laid a glove on Wycombe in this game, lacked quality, and that is sort of a theme so far this season. So they need to turn the corner, as much as obviously we focus on Wycombe and the news story there in terms of the change of manager. Northampton need something to turn around, and obviously it's not going to be transfers. The window's shut now, so they've got to do the best with what they've got, and they need to figure out a way of creating more chances.
Absolutely. We'll turn our attention to Lancashire and a Lancashire derby between Bolton and Wigan. Um, Emphatic result here in the end for Stephen Schumacher's side. 4-1 victors over Wigan. I think they were helped slightly in terms of the Wigan defence, but I guess a win's a win, especially when it's a local derby as well.
Yeah, I mean, the defending was horrendous. That is the absolute top and bottom of it. The fourth goal in particular was abysmal. If you haven't seen it, I don't even know if I can describe it. The defending was, the ball was sort of, it came to one of the centre halves and he looped it somehow directly up in the air, and then his fellow centre half flicked it on straight to the Bolton attacker for the fourth. But as much as obviously you peg a lot of the blame at Wigan's defence, and it was a surprise, really. I mean, I was at Wigan last week to watch Doncaster, and they looked really good. They were looked solid defensively. They looked dangerous in transition on the counter attack. Mullin, who scored, the only positive from this game,
Yeah.
Wigan, was Mullin's goal. A pretty nice
It's a
finish.
good
He
finish
looked,
as well. Yeah, really good finish, that one.
yeah, definitely that. He looked a real handful against Doncaster last week, and they looked like they had something about them. And then 7 days later, they put themselves sort of in this local derby, and then they completely capitulate. The first win at home for Bolton against Wigan in 11 years. That was the stat on the highlights package with Sky, which you wouldn't believe at all, really, in terms of how this game transpired. But Bolton, it is worth focusing on how well they did play, because as poor as Wigan were, Bolton were really good for their money. They have the most shots on targets of any team so far this season in the league. They're the second best in terms of a lot of the passing stats, most touches in the opposition box, and all those little bits and pieces have added up. And in this game, it's come good with the 4 goals, and were very clinical, making the most of the chances that presented themselves. You'd say the first 3 goals were all from giving the ball away from Wigan, but you've still got to put the ball in the back of the net once you've picked it up. And Bolton did very well in that regard. Thierry Gale and obviously Foss as well, really
Yeah.
shining through in this game. Both tremendous players. And but Bolton, yeah, really, really strong performance. Whereas Wigan, a dreadful, dreadful display.
Yeah, I just pick up on I guess the two players that you've mentioned there, and I guess more widely in terms of Bolton's attack as well. So you got Thierry Gale on the left hand side. You've got Mario Cozier on the right, who impressed last weekend as well. Did really well. Scored a great finish in that one, and then sort of Marcus Forss just behind the striker of Mason Burstow. They've got a really winning formula there. Gale with a goal and assist in the match, Forss with 2 goals, and then Burstow with another. Cousin Cozier didn't sort of get a goal contribution, but as mentioned, he impressed with a goal and performance last weekend. But that sort of attacking lineup, it seems to be a real force to be reckoned with. I guess in particular Force, who has spent time at Middlesbrough beforehand, but didn't really get a chance. Really, it's now 2 goals in 4 games for Bolton, and having only scored one in the entirety of last season, and we're not even what are we? We're barely a fifth of the way through the season. That's going to be good reckoning, isn't it, in terms of Marcus Force, but also the whole attacking lineup for Bolton as a whole.
Yeah, it's moving in the right direction, isn't it? And they had, obviously, we spoke about in the summer how sort of the big changeover, the attack was part of that in terms of more experienced heads moving on, and then they've moulded a more dynamic front line, and a front line that can play and score in different ways. To sort of hark back a little bit to what we were saying about Wycombe in terms of having different methods and different ways to score, and that is definitely something Bolton have at their disposal now. And as we spoke about them a little bit last week in terms of they've had a lot of late goals in games, they've had a lot of sort of pinching points, whereas the underlying stats have looked good. Now in this game, they've put both of those sides of the games together. They've looked good on the
Yes.
stats, and they've looked good in terms of their actual play, and the goals they've scored. So yeah, really positive result. Doing it in the derby as well, as you mentioned right at the top, is always a good thing as well.
Yeah, well, absolutely, and I guess sort of just a word or so on Wigan. Um, Disappointed to lose in the derby match. That's I guess takeaway number one. Takeaway number two, I was quite disappointed with Sam Tickle in between the sticks for Wigan. I think, we mentioned in terms of Trent's a couple of mistakes. It's not really like him in terms of making multiple errors in a game, but we've got to talk about the finish from Paul Mullin in terms of, I guess, the only one thing positive from the
Mm.
Wigan display. Great finish, wasn't it? Just outside of the area, sort of bending right into that far corner, and I guess gave the travelling fans, of which there were quite a lot, something to cheer about.
Yeah, the really nice finish, wasn't it? And I sort of said earlier in terms of how that was the only positive. I think you've been a little bit harsh on Sam Tickle.
Yeah,
I know. I
yeah,
obviously put the boot in on Corey Dye at Stockport last week, and he got a clean sheet this
yeah.
weekend. So
Well,
he's
Sam
so
Tickle clean
Stockport. I
sheet
said,
next week then. Yeah, Sam
yeah,
Tickle
yeah,
clean sheet.
perhaps. But no, I'm not sure. I'd blame Sam Tickle for the goals. I think the book stops with the defence really. But yeah, I'm not quite sure. And I mean, yeah, Corey Dad didn't even play this weekend, did he? He got subbed out for Hinchcliffe, who got the clean sheet for Stockport. So maybe not even. Maybe he won't reset it. But he got a clean sheet obviously last
Right.
week against
Yes.
Doncaster. Not they had very much to do in that game, has to be said. But yeah, no, I think a little bit harsh.
Oh, okay. Right. We'll move on swiftly then. Two of the sides that have been sort of the front leaders so far this season, Cardiff and Bradford. I think they were first and second going into this one
Yes.
in terms of the league table rankings. And I don't know about you, but I was pretty surprised with how this one finished.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely fair. I mean, the shock being that Bradford scored 3 goals, really, because Cardiff hadn't conceded from open play before this game. They conceded twice, both penalties, and in this game, go and concede three. One of those a penalty, but two from open play. And Bradford have turned that corner after that blip against Doncaster a couple of weeks ago. They beat Huddersfield, really convincing display in the derby, and then take the long travel out to Wales to win this one. I read an interesting piece this morning, recording this on Sunday, from Chris Waffen from the BBC, and that is definitely worth a read in terms of his summary of the game and his analysis of it. But he said Cardiff were sort of stunned by the high intensity and how intense Bradford's play was, which is definitely saying something because they've played some good teams so far this season, Cardiff, and come out on the right side. And this is obviously their first defeat. And to say that Bradford was the most intense in terms of their play team they've played so far this season is definitely a mark in the positive column for them. He sort of spoke a bit about naivety on Cardiff's part and that streetwise, the experience on Bradford's. And that definitely sort of how the game panned out. They've scored 17 goals now, Bradford. They're the league's top scorers. And then the stat that goes along with that is they have the second lowest average possession. So they're not keeping much of the ball. Cardiff, obviously, a team who like to have the ball, whereas Bradford, happy to go without it, but they're scoring a lot of goals. Lee scored the first one, 16th minute in. That was a really lovely
Great
strike, wasn't
finish.
it?
Yeah, yeah. Great finish.
And then the second one, a penalty. I don't know if you've seen the challenge for this penalty, but absolutely dreadful.
Yeah.
It was on Sarcevic, who came back up and scored the penalty, sort of slamming it down the middle. But Gabriel Osho just slid in, and it was the slippery surface. You mentioned earlier how sort of wet and miserable it was yesterday, but he slid in a good few yards and cleaned out Sarcevic in the box for a very easy penalty. That's 2-0 at half time. And then Northfield scored just after the break, picking up a free ball at the edge of the box. He's got 2 and 2. Very good player, obviously moving on from Wimbledon. One of the other promoted teams switching over to Bradford and he's hit the ground running so far this season. So they're firing on all cylinders, Bradford. They have been all season. And how long will it continue? I guess is the question. Will this last the full season? Is this still, can we say 8 or 9 games in that we're still in this feeling out process of the early stage of the season? But as it is, regardless of which side of the argument you fall on there, Bradford, very good for their result, very good value for it away to Cardiff.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess you mentioned the first strike that made it 1-0 to Bradford. Greg Lee scored. That was a great finish in terms of to put Bradford ahead, and whether they can continue this, I don't know. You wouldn't put it past them, I guess. We have seen them so far this season have a bit of a blip, and that will be natural, especially over the long season. Whether they can keep it up, but yeah, I'm pretty confident in terms of they've come up already, ruffled a few feathers. beaten sides that you wouldn't have thought that they would have beaten. They've got a cracking fan base behind them. They've got a good quality players. They've got a good manager as well, sort of backing them, and they pick up results that you wouldn't expect them to do. And so, yeah, why not? Why not sort of, tip Bradford to be up there or thereabouts at the end of the season, in terms of they seem to have everything behind them, really, that a successful side does have. Um, and I guess today is absolutely well. Saturday's result was a statement of intent, really. I mentioned it was the top two going against each other, and Bradford have absolutely stood the test of time in terms of quite comfortably beating a side that have had a great start to the season. So yeah, why not for Bradford going forward? I guess they were helped. You mentioned in terms of that penalty shout, Gabriel Osho. That guy was playing in the Premier League a couple of years ago. It's an unbelievable challenge there, really. But you can that you're gonna have stuff that's gonna help you along the way, and that's the case. To be fair, yeah, I was very impressed with Bradford actually. Sasvich took his penalty well. Lee, as you mentioned, sort of took the first goal well as well, and yeah, plenty of positives as well. We've not even mentioned Bobby Poynton, who scored twice against
Mm.
Huddersfield last weekend. He didn't necessarily get on the goal sheet this weekend, but he's impressed in previous weeks before, and they've got Stephen Humphries to come back into the fold as well. The squad looking very
They've
good.
got good
Different
options, yeah.
options, yeah, different options, absolutely. So, and that's a real sign of a good side, and they will be absolutely singing their praises because they currently sit top of the table, and we know it's only the early stages, but um, it's a great achievement, isn't it, for a side that has just come up and to only have one defeat in nine, 6 wins as part of those as well. It's been a cracking start for Bradford, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's sort of saying the least, isn't it, really, in terms of how well they've started this season for any of the promoted teams to come up and start as well. To be top of the table at any stage of the season as a promoted team is some feat. Never mind, sort of a few games in, we've had that bit of time, and they're still up there and they're still churning out great results and they're great performances as well, which is really important. They're not just winning games; they're outplaying teams and winning games. So yeah, I mean they've been absolutely superb. There's no two ways about that. And they continue to tick along in the right direction. And we'll see how long it can last in a way, because there was no signs of this coming from Cardiff in terms of
Yeah.
them being a bit sort of stunned by this Bradford team because they've been playing so well. So if Bradford can do it to a team like Cardiff, is there anyone in the league they can't do this to? I mean, is the question that's going to be asked as the weeks go on.
Yeah, scoring at the right time as well, Cardiff. Scoring on the 16th minute, sort of in that first 20-minute mark, and then
Bradford, yeah.
Bradford, sorry, yeah, and then just 5 minutes after half time as well. So scoring at the right times as well, keeping that momentum flowing. We'll move on to chat about Lincoln City, and they hosted Luton Town. Same result as the Cardiff Bradford game, and I guess we have to praise Lincoln this time round in terms of their impressive display.
Yeah, very impressive. They were absolutely superb. But at the other side of it, Luton were absolutely dreadful, and that became as a real shock. I mean, I've seen a lot on social media this morning in terms of Luton fans, not in a disrespectful way towards Lincoln, but saying that how are we in a situation where Lincoln can be playing so well with their resources against a team like Luton are, like we are, playing as badly as they've been, and that is a real conundrum that needs sorting out. Matt Bloomfield, I guess there's a big discussion to be had there in terms of his position at the minute. They have 4 wins and 4 losses out of their first 8 games. There's a very bad atmosphere around the place, whether it be the fan base, whether it be in the dressing room. Who really knows? It's hard to tell, isn't it, at this stage? But there's no doubt in a real lack of energy and a losing mentality at that football club. It seems to have really set in, and if they're not careful, they can keep sliding. But not to bury the lead in terms of how well Lincoln played. I guess we can loop back round. I'll give it to you in a minute to talk about the situation with Bloomfield at Luton. But Lincoln, very good money for their result. A Ben House brace, not said that for a very long time, and then a goal as well and an assist for their loanee from Coventry off the bench, Justin Obekwu, who looked very good and nice, finished for his goal as well. And Lincoln were absolutely streets ahead, and it could have been more really than the 3-1 it was, taking their chances and playing some good football. And Scribano's got that team ticking. They're doing very well. They're up the top end of the table, a bit like we're talking about with Bradford, Stevenage, another team who are up there. And they're all three of the most teams who are surprisingly where they are at this stage of the season. I don't think anyone expected that trio to be up near the top end a few games in to the campaign. But Lincoln looking very good. And despite their sort of issues in terms of depth, especially defensively, they've added a few obviously on deadline day. They added 4 or 5 on deadline day, and they've pushed forward with that. A few loanees at the top end of the pitch who are starting to contribute as well. And then, yeah, they're just looking a real threat. Whereas Luton, to hand back to you, Seb, are very much the opposite.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in terms of their attacking options are good in terms of starting Jerry Yates and Naki Wells up top, but it's just not clicking for them at the minute. They lost, I guess, their main attacking threat over the summer in Carlton Morris. He went to Championship side Derby, and they've not really filled the void that he left really, in terms of up front and what they have as options. They do have some different options off the bench, but a lot of them are sort of untested, really, and they've not really played in English football before. Never mind it at the League One level before as well, and you're always going to struggle when you're not quite familiar with the league or with sort of expectations and what it takes to win a game. So yeah, certainly questions have got to be asked. I think I don't think he's in any trouble imminently, but as you said, sort of if this inconsistency for Luton keeps rumbling on, then there has got to be sort of fingers pointed at Bloomfield. He had a really disappointing season last year in terms of their relegation from the Championship. And performances weren't great last year, and then going into this season, performances have improved slightly, but not in every game at all, really. And there has been some miserable displays from Luton Town, and obviously Saturday's result being one of them. So yeah, four wins, 4 defeats from 8, and yeah, we mentioned this I think last week in terms of consistently inconsistent, but there's got to be a point where you've got to start getting results and start getting positive results on the bounce and repeatedly, and that's just not been the case for Luton Town. They seem to have that real sort of losers mentality, and I think that's a case from back-to-back relegations, but Bloomfield's brought in to try and prevent that, and evidently he hasn't so far. So yeah, work to be done, I think, from a Luton perspective, and yeah, it's just not clicking for them at the minute. They do have a side with quality, but they're just not clicking and they're not gelling. And yeah, it's not looking good for Luton at the moment.
Yeah, no, that's exactly fair. And they have too good a squad. It's not just a team; they have too good a squad in terms of that depth as well to be struggling as much as they have been. And yeah, it's only a matter of time before those fingers start getting pointed, as
Yeah.
you said, Seb, in the manager's direction, because that's just how football works in the modern climate. When results start to go against you, it's the manager's head that falls first. So we'll see sort of over the next couple of weeks. Maybe they have Doncaster next Saturday. Obviously, we need a win because we've been sort of two in a row now, 2 defeats in a row in the league. So you're going to be looking at that game. We've got a big cup tie against Spurs in midweek, and then you've got to be looking at that game and going, well, Luton are on a bad stretch of form. We can go there and win. And then they've got Blackpool and Stevenage, Huddersfield after that, who Huddersfield and Stevenage are both up the top end of the table. Blackpool have just won, which we're going to talk about in a second. So it's not Luton are now a team that you look at and go, oh, we could beat them, where you wouldn't have said that at the start of the season.
And it's the sort of not maintaining 90 minutes as well in terms of they got the equalising goal in terms of Saturday's result. Jordan Clark in the 77th minute, and at that point you think just hold on here, and then they conceded a goal in the 85th and then a goal in the 90th to concede any sort of taking anything away from them really, and that's
Against Plymouth, yeah.
disappointing. Yeah, it's just holding on really for results, and Luton just aren't able to hold on. But you're right in terms of that the squad should be able to in terms of the players that are involved in the side and off the bench as well. So yeah, disappointing times for Luton, and certainly sort of one to keep an eye on, I think, at the moment. We'll move across now to the seaside, and yeah, we'll that was it. We'll move on elsewhere now. No. In terms of Blackpool facing Barnsley, I think a game of two halves in that Barnsley proper dominated in the first half. They had some really sort of nice um, moves of play. Just that final option really lacking in terms of McGoldrick had a couple that he poked wide in terms of the ball was cut back to him in the 18-yard area. He just one of them put wide, one of them fired over the crossbar. Keeler Dunn took advantage of poor defending in the Blackpool back line, but again sort of fired over, which is surprising from him. And then second half, clearly Steve Bruce had given a rocket up the a fire in the bellies, and they came out a different side, Blackpool, and yeah, just had Barnsley on toast all the second half, and without necessarily really creating that much. Barnsley uh, Blackpool penned Barnsley into their own half, and grabbed a late grabbed a late winner, I beg your pardon, to seal all 3 points. It's one of those, where a side just dominated for so long, and you think there's a goal coming, and a goal came right in the last minute, 98th minute from Jordan Brown, just sort of on the edge of the penalty area, and yeah, into the bottom corner to give Blackpool the win on this one. So yeah, disappointed, I think, from a Barnes point of view, in terms of having that good first half and having sort of nothing to show for it, and then to having to basically be forced to sit in our own half for the second half and defend Blackpool's attacks. Yeah, frustrating, I think. But Steve Bruce will be happy. I guess to fling it back onto a Blackpool perspective, it sort of takes the pressure off a little bit of Steve Bruce.
Yeah, no, exactly that. So I'm glad to hear you enjoyed your trip out to the Irish Sea coast yesterday. Yeah, I mean, Steve Bruce, that been the main story, isn't it? I put in my notes that it saves his skin. I don't know if that is taking it too far, but I think he was definitely in trouble in terms of if the bad form and the bad performances kept coming, that fingers would, as we mentioned with Matt Bloomfield a minute ago, fingers would start getting pointed. Jordan Brown sort of that get out of jail free card at the end of the game, a really nice side footed finish into the corner, as you mentioned. Seb, an important victory for Blackpool. Only their second win of the season. They were 4 without heading into this one. Only 1 point they picked up out of the 12 available across those games. So they needed something to go their way, and they played well, obviously, as you mentioned, in the second half. I'm not going to add too much, because obviously you were there, saw it with your own eyes.
Yeah, cheers
But
for that
getting
one.
that late, getting that late goal is obviously could be the boost they need
Yeah,
to try and turn it around after a pretty poor start. The only other thing I was going to add really was Conor Horahan. Obviously, since he came in at Barnsley, it's only the second time his team have failed to score in a game. They didn't score in defeat at Wimbledon, and now here against Blackpool. Darrell Clark's last game actually in charge before Horahan came in was at Blackpool, a 3-0 defeat. So a little bit full circle in terms of not scoring out at Blackpool. But you'd assume really that it's going to happen, isn't it? You're not going to
oh
score
yeah,
every game. They score a lot of goals at Barnsley. I had Keeler Dunn captained on my fantasy EFL team, so I wasn't happy about that. But yeah, I mean, more importantly, really, a good result for Steve Bruce and for Blackpool.
yeah. I guess just again, just one final point is Blackpool got the victory. Sort of fair play to them, but they'll be, I guess, eagerly waiting to see, because they had a couple of injuries to some of their key players. So George Honeyman went off injured. Josh Bowell went off injured. And I think Scott Banks went off injured as well. So they made about 4 substitutions in about 5 minutes. 2 of them were planned, and then the other 2 were sort of as a result of injuries. So that's certainly Honeyman impressed in that second half. He was instrumental to
He's been
sort of
good so far this
Blackpool's
season.
comeback. Yeah. So that's sort of something to watch in terms of um, how they get on, because as you mentioned, they were sacrificed because of injuries. So that's sort of a dampener on Blackpool's victory. We'll move elsewhere and look at another side that clinched victory, and that was Reading. They were hosting Leyton Orient, and sort of coming back from defeat against Barnsley last weekend, and they did it in some style in terms of the result against Leyton Orient.
One hell of a segue there. So yeah, Marriott and Fraser with the goals for Reading, and a frustrating one for Leyton Orient. They didn't make the most of their chances, and that is the real theme of the game. Reading made the most of their chances, put two of them away. Leyton Orient had a lot more and didn't make the most of them. Perkins and Connolly really had big opportunities, really strong opportunities to score, and weren't able to do so. The opener came against the run of play, that old trick of the goalkeeper goes down, bit of a treatment, a little bit of a team talk, then they come and score. So they've utilised that little bit of a trick very well in Noel Hunt. And much as we've talked about an important victory for Steve Bruce, an important victory for Noel Hunt. I saw a few sort of comments and things like that saying it was papering over the cracks a little bit. But if this victory, they didn't play particularly well in the game, Reading, but if the points can propel them forward to coming onto a bit of good form, then it'll be more than worth it, and they can perhaps push forward. But as it is, it may look like it is just papering over those issues by sort of scraping this victory. If you can scrape a 2-1, obviously I sort of talked about how they weren't the best team in this game, but they took their chances. Leyton Orient didn't. And that really the top and bottom of it. They look pretty unorganised and disjointed at times, Reading. But despite all that, they've won the game, and that's all that really matters at the end of
Yeah.
the day.
Yeah, and it was nice finish, especially for that opener. Nice finish from Jack Marriott there, sort of another sort of goal that sort of bends into that far bottom corner. So that's sort of nice one to open the mark for Reading. And in terms of their start to the season, it's been 8 games for them, 4 defeats, 2 draws, 2 victories. You're right in terms of, I guess they've won this one, but not necessarily,
Not
deserving,
convincingly.
but yeah, no, not convincingly, but it's stuff like that just sort of keeps you ticking on, isn't it? Really, in terms of getting results when perhaps you've not been the better side or when you've not been deserving of a victory. Just picking up results like these will in the grand scheme of things do them a world of good, particularly after what's been a pretty disappointing run of form for Noel Hunt's side. I guess as for Leyton Orient, they scored at the right time in terms of getting that equaliser just 3 minutes after the half-time whistle, and you think that's a great time to score. Momentum's in their favour. Just didn't quite go for them, did it this time?
Yeah, no, exactly that, and they just didn't make the most of the chances they had. They had sort of superior XG. They had 70% of the possession in the game, and weren't able to convert that into the goals. They obviously drew last week against Bolton. You'd probably say unlucky in terms of that 94th minute. A really amazing goal, that one. From Bolton, but they had a victory before that with a late goal of their own, and they haven't been convincing in their play. Pretty inconsistent, you would say. Leyton Orient, they're 14th at the minute, 3 wins, 2 draws, 4 losses. It really paints that picture of a team that haven't been at their best. Obviously, that massive turnover in the summer, and they haven't been able to re-find the form they had towards the back end of last season. So we'll see how long that sort of takes, that adjustment. But Reading, yeah, they need to find form of their own. Talked about in terms of their more losses than victories in these early goings of the season. So a victory for them, no matter how it comes, is a good one, and they'll hope they can sort of take that positive of the points forward and to turn into results, as I said, into
Yeah,
performance is a big
no,
part.
yeah, absolutely. In terms of 3 points there for Reading, and in terms of results elsewhere, would start off with Stevenage and Exeter. They were 2-1 victors over Exeter, and that puts Stevenage second in the table. We mentioned this bit earlier on. Who'd have thought that they would be up there at this point of the season? Meanwhile, Rotherham United were left travelling back to South Yorkshire without anything as they lost 1-0 to Stockport. Kyle Wootton scoring yet again. Port Vale 2, Mansfield 1. It finished with Ronan Curtis's penalty, a sealing victory for Darren Moore's side over 10-man Mansfield. Plymouth fell to defeat at home to Peterborough, and it's a first clean sheet since for
Yeah,
Peterborough
since
since the
April, yeah,
EFL Trophy final. Yeah. I was just trying to wrap my head around that. Yeah, so which is
it's
quite
unbelievable,
staggering,
really,
really. Yeah.
how long it's taken, yeah, for a clean sheet.
It's quite staggering that really. Sort of Plymouth, they've been on a couple of good uh, run of positive results, but that's sort of come to an end now with the result on Saturday. Meanwhile, Jamie mentioned this off air to me in terms of two goalkeeping errors. Sees Wimbledon beat Doncaster Rovers. Timothy Lotu-Twala at fault there, and then 0-0 between Huddersfield Town and Burton Albion. So that's drop points for Huddersfield, who I'm sure will be fighting to get near the top of the table. That's all the results from Saturday's games in League One. And that is it for myself and Jamie. I will be back same time, same place next week. In the meantime, Sam and Callum will be back with a preview episode to look at the fixtures ahead of next weekend. And hopefully you can stay nice and dry after the wet weather of the weekend. And for myself and Jamie, we'll see you next time.